with this. Okay, let's talk about knobs a bit. Now, in Maya, they are named surfaces, but they mean the same thing as your knob modeling technique. And you can see that you can also create objects with knobs the same way that you create objects with polygons. But the 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 underlying function of or the underlying model which they are created is different. Alright, so if I create a sphere with a knobs model, alright, as a sphere, okay. Now notice that it looks different from how our polygon came in. Of course, we have edited this a bit, but if I can try and get this to return back, alright, now just to make them match up a bit in height, alright. Now, okay, so this is our knobs, alright. You can see that its makeup is very different from that of our square, alright. Makeup is very different, alright. And you can already see that it looks smooth straight up, but smooth. It can't be anything but smooth. Now, if I go through its input node, so you can see the difference. Yeah, we remember I said that the knob is always made up of a rectangle. Now you see the square sphere and you wonder how this is a rectangle. Now, if I edit this end sweep, alright, you can see how it opens. I close it back to 360, you can see. Alright, now immediately you can begin to understand that this object is different. Its makeup is different from a sphere. The sphere is just made up of all these polygons with all the spaces. Alright, with all the spaces on it now. Now the same cannot be said of this other object here. There are no vertices on the knobs, they are just lines. They're just lines. Alright. So you can already see the lines. You can already see those lines. I come back to this and take our and switch back. You can see the starting code that creates it already. Alright. Yeah. You can edit that. All this can make all this and so even if I reduce, remember the way in which I reduce the size of this one. Notice that when I reduce the size of this, it does not make the object less smooth. Alright, it's still the same number, it's still smooth all the way through. If I do the same to this, you can see how it breaks down immediately into a very not spherical object. Alright, I need to increase the number of polygons to even make it match the smoothness of the knobs. Right, and that tells you a bit of how they're made up of how they are made. Alright, so we have talked about how a knob is made up of curves that are now made into square. Let me go back of gel. Alright, I'm going to go into one of my side views so we can understand this what I'm about to talk about. Yeah. Now this is a curve. This is the mathematical base from which the knob surface is created. Curves. Alright. Now I can draw a curve on a plane by setting out all these points. Alright. Notice that as I set it out, the object, the line being formed is continuously being smoothened to make it work. Alright. I'm pressing delete now to remove all of them. Now let me use this to do something that you may be able to recognize. Alright. Start here. I press enter, I close the cover. Now this looks like something you may recognize, like the profile of the bottle. Now we all know that bottles are smooth, technically smooth at least around one particular axis, right? Um, so if I create a curve like this, um, what I did just now was move the center of this curve to the body of the curve. Before it was at the center, the origin, alright? But when I needed to move it, I didn't want to move it from the origin there. So I brought the center to the body nearer to the curve itself so that I could more easily see what I was doing in terms of movement. Alright? So this is a curve. How do you make this into a NURBS um, surface? Alright? Like I told you before, a knob is always a smooth surface, a smooth shape, just made up of curves, alright? That will always form a rectangle. So how do we do complicated stuff with knobs when all you can always do is a rectangle? This is where I will show you a bit of a trick so that you can take this with you, alright, and you can talk about it in more advanced classes, alright? But now, how do we edit NURBS surfaces? All we have is a curve. But remember that we placed points when we did this. How do I access those points? So if I go back to a select by component, alright, and I select point, yeah, there are no faces on this curve, but there are points on it, alright. And as soon as I do that, you can begin to see points that you can use. They also are coupled the same way vertices are coupled, but their function on the knobs is different from their function on the polygon. But you can see that I can begin to edit the points of this curve. I can begin to edit how it looks. Alright. So if you are to try and create something like this for say for a advert of a bottle or something, yeah, and you are not getting exactly the right shape that you wanted, this is how you can use a knob surface. Now, why is it better to use this knobs modeling to create this rather than the polygon? Because you want a smooth surface for this bottle. When you are doing a bottle, you want a smooth surface. You don't want a surface that is made up of all this sort of all these shapes, all this all these polygons that are inflexible. Yeah, you want a curve. Alright, so this is our curve here. Alright. Now how do I make this? This is a trick that you will learn and that can be useful in a lot of other things where a knob surface is just easier to work with. Alright. In our next class, where we're going to talk about creating text, you will learn more about the some of the advantages of knobs model. But if I were to just start with this, I want to try and do something. And because the way that since I've done a profile, how do I get a bottle? You will assume that I will just rotate this curve around an axis, all right? And this is one of the fundamentally advantageous things about the curve is that you can always use it to rotate around something to create an object that is still a rectangle but round an axis. So in this case, I press insert to move the center of this object to their origin line. Alright. And I'm just doing that. Remember we talked about snapping to grid. I can use that to make sure that I'm at the grid, I'm at the line every time I want. If I press insert again, I take it out of the axis mode. Alright, so I'm here. Now, one of the things I can do is come to surfaces and say revolve. These are all tools under our knob surface. Alright, we'll talk about planar, alright, later and some of these other ones, but for today I use revolve. I click on the square, it gives me options. Alright. I want to let it revolve around my y axis. Alright, this axis noted by green, which is this line. I want to revolve it round. You can already imagine in your mind how it will go round. Alright. Yeah, so if I leave almost all the other settings as they are, and remember I can change. One of the things that you can do is change the nature of the object after it has been converted. But I'm going to leave it as knobs now. You can do polygons. Alright. So I say revolve. Immediately you can see that it has revolved that object, that curve around our center axis. Now, let me move that out. You can see our object already. Yeah, it is not a fancy bottle. Yeah, one of the things that works in um see something magical that happened there just now. One of the things that you can do is that because you created the object from a curve, the curve is still connected to that object. Now it means that if I make edit, alright, on that curve, the edit still let me move this away. The edit still affects the bottle. So then I go back to my point and then say I want to reduce the line here. Notice how those lines, the object shifts. Alright, as I do that. Yeah? Notice how they shift. Because the curve, this object that has been created is still connected to this curve. Now this is our knob curve, alright? And you can see the same points we have talked about still here. So you can do this. Yeah. Look at how you can see already how this is created. Now, if I want to remove the influence of this curve from this object, I simply come back to the object mode, right, and then edit, delete by type history. Now, remember we talked about history. This is one of the nodes that has been created on this object, the revolve. The revolve is connected to the curve, alright? So if I delete this history from this object, delete by type history. Now I've removed the connection. Notice that there's no revolve input node here any longer. Alright? And that means that they are not connected anymore. So if I select this and make any crazy adjustment, it does not affect it the way it was before. Alright? But this is still a not surface and we can see the points on it and you can edit those points. Note how it always breaks this object into small rectangular patches as it were. Alright? Yeah, you can see that's a patch, that's a patch, that's a patch. They are not attached to each other and yet they make up this bottle. Alright? So this is how knobs work. This is how they work. Alright? This is how they work. Now, some of the other things that we have done by deleting the history is also deleting the ability to do this sweep that we did here, this changing of the sweep. If we didn't, we can do exactly the same to this bottle and be able to open it in this way that we are doing with this object here. Alright? But I don't want to go through too deeply into it. Alright, but you can see already kinds of things that we can do with this. This is our polygon object. We can use it to create objects that are angular. And then this is our knot object. We can use to create objects that are smooth or organic in the flow of the body or the profile of the object. Alright. That should give you an idea of what you can do. As a side to that, as an extension, this is some of the other material that shows you how knobs are created. Polygons are made up of straight line edges. Alright. Knobs are made up of points that create lines or holes. but also create a more smoothly mathematical accurate curve through those points, right? Um, this is one of the things that now look at. I show you this image, or notice how you can create things like a cup from curves. All right, so if I just the same way we did the bottle, I create this curve right around, and then I revolve it to create this cup object that has been created here. All right, some more another example of the knobs and the nature and the things that make it up. Their points, as we saw there. There is the line itself. There is a curve direction that is shown by some hard lines. All right, even though those hard lines are not um, the curve or the line in itself, but it helps you to track the direction of it. Now, the line between those points, which are also called CVs, yeah, are called hulls. You can also use the hull to edit the curve. Note that all these lines, they are only editing this bluish curve, the distance curve. All these things are also just points or edit lines, edit the curve in itself. The curve is the knobs curve, but all these are tools and guides, directions and points so that you can more do some more complex stuff with the body or with the flow of that curve. All right. Now, if I just show you an example of a car. Now, okay, let me show you this. Yeah. Now, if you look at this, you can already see that there are two ways in which you can revolve a curve to create this. Now, if I create a curve along, yeah, and revolve it around that axis, I can create this side of it. Now, this inner part is a bit more complicated, and so I may want to start this part with a um polygon modeling. But when I want to do this outer ring, I can always create a knot around this profile, alright, and then revolve it around to create the body of this. Something like that shown in this example of a full of the net, alright. You can see that this first part is made up of a polygon extruded or pushed inwards, extruded outwards, extrude these points from these faces by selecting these faces and extruding them. Alright, you have deleted the sides there and then push this point and use and extrudes from this point outwards and adds this division. Then you duplicate them around, alright, and then so you can create this object. Note that you also again extrudes this one out, alright, to create this form. Alright, now it comes and creates a curve, a knobs curve, alright, and then revolve. Okay, so and then we use that to revolve to create the sides. Yeah, it creates this here, and then revolve it right round to create the ring. This final product. So you can see that a combination of the two can be used. They're not saying that you only use one method to create whatever it is you're creating. You're creating something as complex as a car, alright? All of this can be created with knobs, and since smoothness and curvature is the important thing, you always get a better result creating all these shapes with knobs, alright? But when you want to do stuff like this, then you are almost better off using polygon modeling. So once you do this side lighting, this part, are almost much better, and this inner area can also be done with knobs. Much always better using the knot modeling to do that. Alright. Now just to as a last bit to show you the difference. Now this is polygon modeling. This is knot modeling. Note that they are just made up of patches of lines that are rectangles, all rectangles, all rectangles. Now these are polygon modeling with many faces. Already you can begin to tell that a polygon model will always be a heavier file than a NURBS model, alright, because all you're using is just a small, large patches that are smooth. While you have to literally work on polygon until you create this much, or then subdivide. And with subdivisions, you increase the um, file size, and because of you are increasing the number of pixels, number of points, the number of edges, all those things. All right. And in terms of the result, you can see that our knobs will always create your smooth highlights. You can see how everything looks straight. Excuse me. But in the case of polygon model, you can see that a lot of the objects, right, will always look rough because you can't get completely smooth surfaces out of a polygon, right? That doesn't mean that that's only useful because in a car you need smooth lines, but in a lot of other objects, all right, you need you need that flexibility to create many points, all right, from some. Yeah. So let me wrap that up there. We'll, in practice, in doing stuff, we'll um, come up with needs of each of those things, and we'll touch on them. But this was mostly to just give you an idea of these forms of modeling and their advantages, so you can begin to think about what you would create and how best to create it. Um, okay, so in our next class, we'll begin to create stuff, and that's the fun part. All right. So until then.